It was supposed to be a simple night shift job to help me pay the bills. I never thought much about working at Walmart, especially on the graveyard shift, but the pay was decent and the hours fit with my schedule. I didn't expect anything unusual, just the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights, the creak of shopping carts, and the soft shuffle of my co-workers stocking shelves. What I didn't realize, though, was that the job came with a set of strange, unspoken rules that no one ever bothered to warn me about. I started at Walmart 3 weeks ago. The first few nights were standard. Long, quiet hours spent stocking shelves, cleaning aisles, and making sure the store was ready for the next day's customers. The night manager, Greg, was a no-nonsense kind of guy, tall with a permanent scowl etched across his face. He seemed nice enough, but the more I worked with him, the more I got the feeling that something wasn't quite right about him or the store. The first rule I learned came from Greg during my first week. Rule number 1, never go into the back storage area alone. It was odd to hear such a rule. The back storage area was just a big, dark room full of boxes and pallets. But Greg warned me with a kind of urgency, his eyes narrowing as he spoke. "You're new here, kid. Stick to your section, stay out of the back, and you'll be fine." I didn't think much of it. He was probably just trying to keep things efficient. After all, the back storage room could get chaotic, especially late at night. But something about his tone made me uneasy. That night, I noticed a few of the other workers seemed off. I caught them glancing nervously toward the back storage area when they thought I wasn't looking. When I asked why, they just shrugged it off, saying things like, "It's just easier not to ask questions," or "You'll figure it out soon enough." I didn't think too much of it at first, but that night I had to take a few boxes to the back. I stood at the entrance, hesitating for a moment. The dim light flickered overhead, casting long, stretching shadows into the room. I could hear a faint rustling from within, like someone, or something, was moving around in the dark. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The air was cold, far colder than the rest of the store. I looked around, but the room was empty. My heart began to race as I set the boxes down, but I quickly grabbed what I needed and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl echoed from the farthest corner of the room. It was deep, almost animalistic. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. I bolted from the back storage room, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what it was, but I had no intention of finding out. The next night, Greg gave me a second rule to follow. Rule number 2, always stock the aisles in a specific order. It seemed like a harmless rule. Greg explained that there was a certain order to how the shelves should be stocked. Aisles 1 through 10, then 11 through 20, and so on. It wasn't a big deal at first, just another task that I needed to follow to avoid any mistakes. But that night, as I was stocking aisle 6, I noticed something strange. It was almost as if the products on the shelves were shifting. I hadn't touched them yet, but they seemed to be moving on their own. Not in a way that was physically possible, but more like an invisible force was pulling them around. I blinked, convinced I was just tired, but the longer I watched, the more it became apparent that something was wrong. Suddenly, a loud crash broke the silence. I turned to find that several items had fallen from the shelves, scattering across the floor. My heart skipped a beat. I knelt down to pick them up, but as I reached for a can of soup, I noticed something odd in the reflection of the polished tile floor. A figure. A tall, shadowy figure standing at the end of the aisle. I spun around, but no one was there. Just an empty aisle. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The silence felt oppressive, like something was watching me. I quickly finished stocking the aisle and moved to the next one, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Later that night, I caught one of my co-workers, Sarah, staring at me from across the aisle. I waved at her, but she quickly looked away and disappeared into the next aisle. When I went to ask her what was wrong, she wouldn't look me in the eye. She muttered something about the rules before hurrying off, leaving me even more confused. The next few nights, the strange occurrences continued. I saw shadowy figures moving in my peripheral vision, felt cold spots that seemed to follow me, and sometimes when I turned around, I would hear whispering voices, faint and unintelligible. It was like the store was alive, watching me, waiting for something. Then came the third rule. Rule number 3, never, ever look into the security cameras after midnight. It wasn't Greg who gave me this rule. It was Sarah in a hushed voice as we were taking a break in the employee lounge. She looked terrified when she said it, her eyes darting nervously toward the security room. You can check the cameras during your shift, but after midnight, don't even think about it. I frowned. Why? She shook her head, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her coffee cup. Trust me, just don't. I didn't fully understand what she meant until the next night. I was tasked with watching the security monitors for a while. There was nothing particularly exciting, just the usual flow of empty aisles and the occasional shopper. But then, just past midnight, the screens flickered. One by one, each camera began to glitch, showing distorted images. I watched in confusion as one of the cameras in the back storage area came to life. It showed the room, completely empty. But then, the shelves began to move. Boxes flew off the shelves, slamming to the ground. And then, something worse. A figure appeared in the corner, half hidden in the shadows. Its form was twisted, almost skeletal, with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. It stepped toward the camera, and for a moment I could swear it looked directly at the screen, as if it knew I was watching. I recoiled in horror, my breath catching in my throat. The screen flickered again, and the figure disappeared. The room was empty once more. I didn't dare look at the other cameras. I quickly shut off the monitor, my hands shaking. What the hell was that? The next night, I confronted Greg. I asked him about the rules, about the strange things I had seen. He looked at me with a hard expression, his voice low. You've seen it, haven't you? I nodded, heart pounding. What is that thing? What's going on here? He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. I didn't want you to find out like this, but now that you have, there's no turning back. The store isn't just a building, it's something else, something older, and we have to follow the rules, or else it wakes up. He explained in hushed tones that the store had a dark history. The original owners had made a pact with something ancient, something that fed on fear. They had built the store over an old cursed land. Over time, the strange occurrences started happening, things moving on their own, shadowy figures lurking in the aisles, people disappearing. The rules were there to keep the entity, or whatever it was, contained. Once it wakes up, Greg warned, his voice grim, there's no stopping it.